Hello, greetings. Welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. This is Doug Michael. Big, huge thank you to all my subscribers, all my new subscribers, and the ones that have been with me from the start, opening their mind and listening to this information. It's greatly appreciated, so thank you one and all. Ladies and gentlemen, since we admitted outright in the Take It or Leave It information video that we are poking the ego through as many avenues as possible to illustrate to my listeners and subscribers how the ego program controls their minds and how defensive it is, I'm going to take the pot shot at the ego right off the bat and tell everyone, you don't know who you are. Now, many of you may have immediately gotten your feathers ruffled by me saying that, and if so, realize that it is your secondary consciousness reacting by saying things in your head like, just who the hell does this asshole think he is by telling me I don't know who I am? I sure as shit know who I am. Where does this guy get off saying such a thing to me? If such thoughts just ran through your head and you feel indignant over that comment, then realize it is the ego itself reacting to that truthful observation. You don't know who you are any more than we did when we were trapped in the first cognition, the secondary consciousness. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, get your feathers unruffled and let me explain the basis for my making such a bold statement. From the time we're born, our ego identity is shaped at first by our parents. Many parents view their children as, just a chip off the old block, and they expect their children to be just like they are. This is really no different than, remember the character in the Austin Powers movie, Dr. Evil, and his sidekick, Mini-Me? To many parents, their children are expected to be just another Mini-Me, a miniature replica of what they are. We are indoctrinated with our parents' beliefs and their cultural backgrounds. We interface with their family members, aunts, uncles, and cousins, and we're shaped to fit into whatever family culture into which we are born. So right from the start, we are being molded to be what others want us to be. We never get a chance to discover who we really are before we're indoctrinated by our parents into what they think we should be according to their own systems of measurement and personal ego expectations. As children begin to develop, they are conditioned into the beliefs of their parents. They are brought up within their parents' religious teachings, traditions, familial structures, and views about society, life, and reality. Very few children are allowed to express themselves beyond the control structures of the family or what is generally accepted as normal. On rare occasions, children are permitted to express their uniqueness. However, it is usually stifled in its infancy. Society is structured to confine consciousness within very narrow and limiting views, ideas, perceptions, thought forms, and possibilities. This limited awareness is then enforced throughout the lifetime of the individual, and so few ever realize it or dare to question that which has been adopted by the indoctrinated consciousness. By the time we reach school age, when the ego personality that has already been shaped by our parents and oftentimes their traditions and their religious beliefs, then we are put into a wider arena with other children and other authority figures called teachers who continue this molding process to turn us into acceptable social members of the herd. This is when the social indoctrination takes off in earnest because we are now removed from the limited perceptual world of our parents and home into the world at large. In his 1933 book entitled The Great Technology, Dr. Harold Rugg spoke about the exact system that has been implemented. A new public mind is to be created. How? Only by creating tens of millions of individual minds and wielding them into a new social mind. Old stereotypes must be broken up and new climates of opinion formed in the neighborhoods of America. And further, through the schools of the world, we shall disseminate a new conception of government, one that will embrace all the activities of men, one that will postulate the need of scientific control and operation of economic activities in the interest of all people. I discussed in my video, The Obedience to Authority Syndrome, how the indoctrination mills of the consortium use education as a form of social and cultural indoctrination. We are going to take this indoctrination down to the level of programming the ego from the very inception of our lives after we're born. From the time we are children, we are having ourselves shaped and molded into being something an outside authority wants us to be, the mini-me syndrome. If we are rebellious to our parents during the early stages of our lives, we are chastised and punished for not following the demands they put on us to be what they want us to be and to believe what they want us to believe. I am speaking in generalities, and I can't take in all the household environments in which every person was brought up, but through these generalities, I think my listeners will be able to see the picture being unveiled in this presentation. If one is raised in a religious household, the punishment is swift and often severe for questioning whatever belief system may be the guiding religion of the family. We are taught to not question our parents too severely, and as children, we sure as shit have no place questioning the household religion or God. We are taught blind obedience to authority of one kind or another. If, for instance, a child questions the ludicrous story of a man being swallowed by a fish and living in his belly for 3 days, as with the biblical story of Jonah, they are questioning God and his presumed holy book. Damn you, logic and inquiring mind, you don't challenge God. In like kind, how many of you heard your parents tell you when you were growing up, don't do as I do as I say? As a child, we may observe what is incongruous behavior in our parents, what we may have been taught is bad behavior, but we are punished in one form or another for raising questions to our parents about their own bad behavior. This goes back to that guilt and shame programming, and there is no parent ego that can stand being guilted or shamed by their own child. When this happens, we are finally confronted with the foundational indoctrination about not questioning authority, and this programming is embedded at a very young age. Many children are raised in religious schools, and the religious indoctrination is only embedded more deeply where not questioning religion is concerned. Behavioral patterns are established and decisions are associated with guilt and sin, so the indoctrination of fear is more deeply embedded and the ego personality is hardened and shaped even more. The public indoctrination mills are little better when you consider that the Fabian socialists have been in charge of the public education system in the US for over a century. We either get indoctrinated with evolutionary Darwinism in the public schools or religion in the religious schools. No matter which way it goes, we are programmed to walk in lockstep. Many people can't afford to put their kids in paid religious schools, so their kids have to delicately walk in two worlds, a world of secularism mixed with their religious beliefs, which the Fabian school system is teaching people to scorn more and more, which only creates more psychological conflict in our children and continues to shape and mold who they are. Through this process of shaping the ego-programmed personality, we learn that in order to survive in a psychotic world with the least amount of guilt, shame, and punishment, we all have to learn to lie. We observe our parents saying one thing and doing another and then lying to each other and their friends about it. At the same time, we are taught that lying is wrong. We learn to keep secrets. The fear of punishment is so strong that we are always fearful of being caught. How many of you with siblings have heard, "Don't tell mom," or "Don't tell dad"? How many of you were told, "You just wait until your father gets home, young man or young lady"? And what I am sharing here is what is generally considered part of a normal household. In those environments with sexual, physical, and constant psychological abuse present every day, it is even more psychologically crippling to a child. When we take a step back and honestly assess all of this information and how our psyches are shaped and molded by others, do any of us really know just who the hell we really are? In light of this information, now you more fully understand my opening observation that you don't know who you are. Somewhere, buried deep underneath all of this programming is your originating or primary consciousness, which has been hijacked by these levels of cultural indoctrination to the point that who you think you are in your ego mind's eye is not who you really are or what you can really be once you transcend all of this programming. You have to climb out from under the mountains of guilt and shame programming, the conflicting thoughts plugged into you by a world of ego liars who are only protecting their own egos from being discovered in order to find who you really are underneath all of these ego-defining programs. With all of this information now in hand, can you in all honesty say that you know yourself? The road of PSOYCA, personal sovereignty over your cognitive advancement, is the one that can lead you to unravel all of these illusions adopted by your ego that have been plugged into you by others for your entire life. There is no shortage of spiritual material in the marketplace that challenges people to learn who and what they really are, but none of those presentations, regardless of the author or tradition, gives anyone an ounce of guidance in respect to how one discovers who you really are, or in fact, just what the hell they mean by telling you this. It is left as just another mystical and unanswered enigma for egos to somehow figure out on their own, and which can't be done by an ego at all. From the second cognition perspective, one learns that who the ego thinks it is not the core consciousness that PSOYCA will lead one to discover. To be a human becoming human in accordance with the New Paradigm books, one has to redefine who they are. All of the points just enumerated were addressed in Embracing the Rainbow, where it is observed. A parent that fails to guide and reasonably and logically discipline a child lacks real love for that child. Few of the millions of children of this time on the planet are truly loved. They are tolerated, used, abused, and forced to grow physically, but not raised up in the knowledge and understanding of who and what they are, and what is expected of them in either the physical or spiritual realms of their life experience. At the bottom of this lies the indisputable fact that parents cannot provide what they do not themselves know. Most now refuse to pass on what was taught them, for it has not led them to fulfillment. Thus, they send their children into adulthood with even less than they received. None of the above does more than delineate the problem and does not provide a solution. The religions of the world offer up their wise writings as the answer, but these have been so adulterated as to provide only more circuitous searching. Thus, it would appear that it is time that true guidance appear on the scene. The question then arises as to how this would or could be disseminated. What has just been shared is what Endall means when he relates that we are all subject to a form of multi-generational programming, where one generation passes on the errors of its own first cognition consciousness to the next, thereby running a continuing cycle of cognitive stagnation. Sure, we have progressed technologically, but emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, human beings are in a state of arrested development. The members of the ground crew incarnated on this planet at this time in order to break this pernicious cycle of species cognitive tyranny, destruction, and control. We have to be the first generation of humans on this planet to build the cognitive exit to this debilitating cycle of stagnant consciousness. If we can't do this, then these multi-generational errors will continue and there will be no cognitive advancement for humanity, and we will continue to poison our children's minds with the same poisons we were indoctrinated with. In order to break this cycle as ground crew members, we each have to remember who and what we are. We are not simply material bodies, we are timeless consciousness experiencing in human form. In order to remember this broader recognition of who and what we are, we have to redefine ourselves away from such limiting ideas about ourselves. This is what Emmanuel truly meant when he taught about being born again. We each have to remake ourselves by reaching the cognitive state of PSOYCA and transcending the ego programming that keeps us all living the materialist 3D illusions about ourselves and our consciousness. As we each recognize and transcend the programming of the ego and its first cognition perceptual world, we discover who we really are, and from a cognitive standpoint, we truly are born again into a higher level of cognitive understanding. By redefining ourselves and discovering our true identity and nature, the old ego perceptions of you fade away, and a new you is born as a result of this process. You become a truly self-created consciousness. Endall covered this subject about becoming self-created in his book, Willful Evolution, where he said, "To be self-created, one has to attain a singularity of conscious awareness. This doesn't mean you create your form in incarnation, your body. It means you are totally in charge of creating your spiritual self, your own cognitive awareness. From the standpoint of the soul, each incarnation in the reincarnational cycle gives us an opportunity to become self-created, free, consciously aware individuals. The vast majority of the time, we miss that opportunity. Our bodies die, the ego disconnects from the soul, and the soul reincarnates once again to try becoming self-created once more, and the cycle repeats ad infinitum, with very few ever becoming self-created. In the process for your own advancement with PSOYCA, again, personal sovereignty over your cognitive advancement, we each have the potential to become a self-created individual, owing your cognitive advancement solely to taking the personal responsibility to create yourself anew by redefining who and what you are without all of the ego programming to define you anymore. You will no longer be defined by your cultural, religious, or political beliefs, and you will shed the illusions about yourself that your parents and the educational systems made you believe about yourself as just another ego-controlled cog in the first cognition machine. These are all definitions that shape and create egos at the hands of others. When you move past all of these definitions about who you think you are left with the rock-bottom truth of who you really are. When you can reach that point of cognitive freedom, then the road to cognitive advancement is limitless. The new paradigm books were released in 1999, and what they proposed at that time is not what we have before us now. As explained in Embracing the Rainbow, it tells us, as each of you became involved within this focus and began the process of composing your individual thoughts to contribute a possible statement of purpose, it became obvious to you that the simple statement required to appeal to all of mankind was not simple to arrive at. In the moment of this writing, it has not yet come forth. The prayer of becoming is not yet widely known. This invocation can set the stage for opening the consciousness to perceive the statement when it is brought forth. The change in consciousness by those using the prayer with diligence in their daily life is interesting to observe. When it is further combined with a conscious clearing of accumulated negative attitudes and letting go of false doctrines from the awareness, it brings about clearly detectable vibrational increases observable by each individual. As the individual vibrations increase, the ability to connect with the source of each is enhanced. The connection itself begins to enliven and allow the body to receive a greater quantity of supportive energy. It is as though this flow of vital energy has been squeezed or pinched so that the flow is barely enough to maintain life. Contrary to what is taught, without this flow of energy from the source that focused each into being, life cannot be maintained in the body. At the center of each focus of awareness and within the physical body is a connecting point that receives this energy flow. When this flow of energy is broken or withdrawn, death occurs. The more intense the negative energies that are active in the body, such as anger, fear, hate, etc., the less energy the body itself is able to receive of the already diminished flow. As these are intentionally released, the invocation of help to become reactivates the connection with each additional repetition. You, the ground crew, are the guides in the setting up of the suggested procedures to uplift your fellow humans in the very near future. It is you that demonstrate the feasibility of these proposals and have input as to the viability of these reminders and suggestions. Reminders and suggestions are exactly what these messages contain. Since most humans now are lost within the complexity of their life experience amid the programmed onslaught of overwhelming control, it is obvious without help being, let alone becoming, is a lost cause. The clearing of negative emotions referred to in this passage is the removal of the ego programming. Your statement of intent to achieve the PSOYCA state of awareness and move into the second cognition is what had not been voiced or discovered at the time the new paradigm books were composed. The procedures that the Bealls put in their books and in those to come provide the tools and understanding to the ground crew that these video presentations are also providing. Each of these videos is an instructional guide to the processes of what every member of the ground crew is going to experience in one form or another as they work to redefine themselves into cognitively aware human beings beyond control of the ego, overlaid consciousness, and its consortium cognitive manipulators. If one wants to object outright, to the ideas and information being presented in these videos, then it is most likely their own ego refusing to relinquish its power over one's consciousness. As stated in the Take It or Leave It information video, we're not here to debate or be drawn into arguments about these processes. They are highly applicable, and they work for everyone who utilizes the processes with the unbending intent to succeed and who don't let their egos make them give up on themselves through the difficult process of redefining ourselves. When the New Paradigm books were written, these processes had not been fully defined as they now have. They were left as an enigma until such time as members of the ground crew figured out how to do what was necessary to do an end run around the consortium's systems of cognitive control. PSOYCA and the second cognition are the as yet unidentified processes alluded to in the New Paradigm books. The gateway out of first cognition systems of control has now been firmly defined as a tangible and workable solution. The only thing left is the individual hard work of redefining ourselves to remove our consciousnesses from all those first cognition systems of control. Become who you are, not who your ego makes you think you are. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me once again and taking the time to listen to Attaining the Second Cognition. I extend my gratitude, my heartfelt thanks to any and to all who take the time to consciously open their mind, search for the truth, and push forward in your own conscious advancement. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you. This is Doug Michael, and until next time, walk in peace.